Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Adults Select Committee. Good morning. And before we make a formal start to our business, for the benefit of anybody watching or listening, perhaps people could please identify themselves, and then we will go into the agenda proper. So, to my right,
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny Manager, Monmouthshire.
Nicola Perry, Democratic Services Officer.
Pauline Watts, Councillor for Caldecott.
Roger Harris, Councillor for Cressonham Ward in Abergavenny.
Penny Jones, Councillor for Raglan Ward. Good morning. Ruth Edwards, elected member for Llantilio Cresceni.
Good morning. David Hill, co-opted member.
Alan Wintle, member for Monmouth.
Ralph Chapman, member for Mardy Abergavenny.
Martin Hickman, member for Llanfoes Fell on the outskirts of Abergavenny.
can I also ask various other people, officers here, to present papers, and other people in the chamber to introduce themselves, perhaps starting with the chairman of the County Council.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Prosser, a scrutiny champion. I'm not a member of this committee, but I'm here to observe and participate as acceptable.
And then
I'm Ian Baker, and I'm the Housing and Communities Manager for the Council.
and Ian will be taking us through some of the earlier items on the agenda. And last but by no means least,
I'm Tyrone Stokes, the Finance Manager for Social Care and Health, and I'll be presenting the month 9, quarter 3 forecast report. Thanks.
Right, do we have any apologies for absence, please, Nicola?
No apologies.
Delia Hudson rang this morning.
Delia Hudson has given apologies, sorry.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest at this stage? Councillor Wintle.
Yes, I've a conflict of interest on item 4, which is the scrutiny of the Housing Register Agreement, as I'm a director of MHA. So I'll have to leave the room, I believe. Do I?
If you feel that you should leave the room in that situation, then that's your judgment, and we will obviously respect that. If you could make sure that you've signed the form, if you haven't already, please, Councillor Wintle. Thank you very much indeed. Any other declarations of interest can I suggest we make as and when, if the topics in the meeting indicate that actually there are interests in play. Is that acceptable to members?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda, public open forum. We've had no notice of anybody wishing to come to raise any issues, and there aren't any members of the public actually in the room. So we can proceed straight to item 4, which is looking at the future delivery of the housing register. And Ian, you're going to lead us into this topic, aren't you? And we've got a paper from you and a health check summary as well. Are you going to cover both? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bit of background, contextual information. As you know, we've got a housing register, which is probably more often referred to as the waiting list for social housing in Monmouthshire. And even though we haven't got any stock, we do have a legal duty to operate a system to assess housing applications and make allocations to vacant social housing properties. And that function is undertaken on our behalf by Monmouthshire Housing Association, and they took that function from the point of stock transfer. So as a council, we've not actually directly administered a waiting list since 2007. A couple of years after the after the arrangement started, that was formalised into a service level agreement, which expires at the end of this year. And we need to make arrangements to either continue that arrangement or do something alternative. So another provider could do it, or it could come back to the council. So that's the scenario that we're in. As part of this exercise, we have looked. We've done a health check about this situation. We had no reason to believe that there were any issues. As officers and as with our strategic role, we've always felt that the housing register has been very well run by Monmouthshire Housing, and it's probably changed massively over the years from what we used to have in the olden days when we used to have the point system. So we consider we've got a far more efficient, far more client-friendly system. And I personally consider that is the road to continue in terms of maintaining that service. And as part of the health check, what we did do was actually identify opportunities for further improving the register. I'm not proposing to really go into those now, but we've had ideas and suggestions given to us about further efficiencies and making it more client focused. So I can't remember where I've included it in the summary, but moving towards a case management system rather than a system of shuffling applications, so more of a personal focus rather than an administrative focus. But I say they're points for later on in the year. So the proposal with this is to work towards establishing a new service level agreement with Monmouthshire Housing, and that's within the council's contract rules. Obviously looking to make sure that we comply with everything on that, and we'll be looking to do a new three-year service level agreement with a 1-year extension. So that's the proposal, and that's on the back of the reassurances that we've been provided by the health check.
Thank you, Ian. So before I invite questions, just for the avoidance of doubt, all of this has been fully checked that if we were to say we supported the proposal to renew, there's no compliance issues, that's all done, and it's your firm recommendation that we should actually renew this, yeah? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Penny-Jones, please.
Oh, thank you, Ian. I just wondered, it says here the council has undertaken an independent health check. I wondered who that involved, please.
It was Andy Gale, the gentleman that supported us with the homeless prevention work. So he's very familiar with, with Monmouthshire, very familiar with our policies, very familiar with the register.
Are you happy with that?
Yes, I have got another question, but shall I?
Wait, just correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, he has come to the committee, hasn't he, previously?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
he did a members session for you, probably about
I thought so.
18 months.
You've got another question, but you're going to wait for it, are you? Councillor Roger Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's no doubt from positive reports that we receive, this is one of the most positive that I've ever seen, and it's absolutely clear cut that, as far as I'm concerned, that we should carry on with the agreement. I think there's no no doubt about that. And I noticed we're even looking at addressing minor pieces of information that we're not successfully getting hold of at the moment. If we do, it'll make it even better. What I'd like to know from you, Ian, it's obviously a brilliant system that we ourselves as this council couldn't do anywhere near as cheaply. Is it possible, is it a system that is recommendable to other authorities? And if it is recommendable to other authorities, can we market it?
No, I don't think we could. I think you've got similar arrangements across Wales and the UK. I mean, we could market it from a point of view of best practice, but I don't think there's any more opportunities over and above that, short of raising our profile and our profile really. I think that's the extent of it. I mean, the system that we've got at the moment is centred around a locator IT system. And we have, again, we've got the reassurances that we have got a fit-for-purpose system which can be developed, and that's an area that I'm really interested in looking to develop further. I mean, the issue for us as an authority is that we don't actually own Locator. That's a Monmouthshire housing system. So if we did end our relationship with Monmouthshire Housing, we'd have to purchase a new system or buy into something. So that would be that would be one of the key risks. But yeah, I think we've got the assurances that we are doing a good job, and we're not lagging behind other authorities. But I do know that there are other IT systems on the market. There's one called Abritas, which is quite widely used, and it's probably a little bit more used than the Locator system. And again, it's another market-leading system. We did actually consider buying that at the time the Locator system was purchased, and the decision was to go for Locator.
Two members, Councillor John Prosser, you've signalled you'd like to ask a question. Then Councillor Penny Jones again, please.
Thank you for your discretion, Chair. Basically, I'm talking as the Armed Forces champion here, and one of the key movers for the future for our covenant agreement is the Welsh Government have said we should follow the 5 principles as laid down in the Royal British Legion document. And the first one of those says, make tangible changes to your social housing allocations policy. In other words, to take armed forces as a priority in certain areas. And I was wondering if you could make a comment on how we do that in our policy, please, having signed the covenant.
Our policy is reviewed regularly, and to be honest, it would have been reviewed around now if it hadn't have been for the debate about the service level agreement. So we've got caught up in that. So we have postponed the review. So I'm hoping the review will be probably during the summer, and there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't consider that as part of the review. You know, and again, I think what I'm keen to know from whether it's yourselves or other stakeholders is the policy at the moment. Does it work, or are there any weaknesses? We're generally pretty confident with the majority of it, but obviously things do change from time to time with demand and need. So, and that could be one of the areas that we consider.
I'd just like to say that I do get good response when engaging with the various officers on this matter. I just wanted to make sure it's in the policy for the future, and I look forward to it being included in that review. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that point. And if Councillor Jones will forgive me for butting in, there's a subsidiary on that. Where are we with the allocation of houses to people from Afghanistan?
I assume you're referring to the Afghan translators.
Yes.
Yeah, I've met with, I can't remember the lady's name, from the partnerships team, and I've been formally asked now a couple of weeks ago to get that ball rolling. We're looking to accommodate 36 households. Most of them are single people, and I've presented the paperwork to my colleagues in the team and I've asked them to go away and have some thoughts about it and look at how we can take it forward. And I've got a meeting on Monday to just further consider that, really. So I think it's doable, and it's looking to obviously combine that with the other caseload. So I've provisionally agreed with that we would look to do 2-3 households per month, but obviously that will be subject to obviously finding the accommodation.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Jones, you did want to ask a question and I took away your opportunity.
More important. This has been half answered actually, because I was going to bring up the question of locator. Because in the recommendations to further improve the service, it says Monmouthshire Council should, on behalf of Home Search, consider purchasing the locator targeted housing options module. So I think I was going to ask you about the value. I think you've answered that. What are the cost implications? Have we done it, and are you going to do it?
No, we've not done anything in terms of, and I couldn't tell you what the costs. I couldn't tell you what the costs are, but the module supports going to that case management sort of arrangement. So where you've got somebody on the register, rather than them just be sat there waiting for a property to come along, there's proactive links between the Home Search team and the individual about their circumstances and about talking to them about the options. And basically you're working with them and giving them information and providing them with support to secure accommodation. So that's really the subtlety. As to the actual nitty-gritty of the software, I haven't looked at it. I don't know how much it costs and how practical it will all be. At the moment, their ideas and principles that I like the idea of, and I'm reasonably sure that there will be some mileage for us, but the next step is obviously to suss it out.
So, but we can live without it for now.
There's nothing broken. It was just really I think the bit that I'm attracted by it is the ability. Well, it's not that bit actually. There's a bit where there's further automation, so it will. Because at the moment an application comes in and it has to be allocated to a band, and there is there's the option to have automatic banding, so it takes out somebody doing input work. So that's the bit I'm quite interested in.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Ian. I'm just wondering how are we addressing people that are in circumstances without a lot of access to IT and that sort of thing, and you're saying you sort of don't want to keep shuffling papers. Is it fairly easily or fairly quickly can they get interviews in their own locality if they've got housing pressure needs? Say if there's a divorce on the horizon or job moving, and accommodation like that. How often do you interview people apart from just taking in a form that's been filled in?
I couldn't answer that per se. What I will say is that the housing options, that's an area where the housing options team do get very involved with home search, and quite often in divorce situations or more urgent circumstances, it tends to be, we tend to get involved because of the homeless possibility. And then of course, so there's an interview undertaken at that part, and we will support any applications as far as the housing register. So there might be medical circumstances, for example, and we'll facilitate that on behalf of the housing register. You've also got housing support, the housing support services that exist. So they will support and advocate people as far as the housing register. So there's another area of advocacy, if you like. And then the other area that you touched on in terms of the IT issue, one of the things that has worked very well with home search is the assisted bidding. So if somebody hasn't got a property, if somebody hasn't got the IT or not got the capabilities to use it, home search will bid on behalf of people. And of course, agencies can bid as well on behalf of clients as well. So, and that's one of the areas that has worked very, very well.
Are there any other questions at this stage? I wonder then if I could ask, can you just take us through the health check paper? Does give us an idea of the costs.
Yeah,
so just so that I understand, we're spending, as a council, we are spending 40,000 a year, as it were, on the staff side, and a further 10 on various parts of the support infrastructure. Is that right? So what's the total cost of the service then, if our share is that?
The total cost of the service is approximately £160,000. 160. And our contribution of £40,000 and 10. The £10,000 was actually for IT administration to Monmouthshire Housing, and we've actually given note, because of the work that we're doing with Torvine, we've actually given notice on that. So we are talking £40,000 in terms of Monmouthshire Housing.
Thank you for that. So, in terms of, if I look at this paper, I think this is a very helpful paper, actually, a combination of your paper and the health check, because I think why I like the paper is it does two things well. It sets out where we are, where we've come from, and what we need to do, but it also sets out very clearly the consequences if we decided not to renew this. And I think that's frankly a good feature of the paper. It's what I always call the what if not dimension, and it gives good weight to both parts. It doesn't say simply this is wonderful, let's continue it. It actually gives a good analysis of the consequences of our not renewing it. So, are there any more questions before we conclude this particular item? My sense, members, is that we want to receive this report, that we accept its recommendations, and that subsequent to the meeting we will be wanting to convey that through the minutes and, if need be, by other means. And we thank Ian for bringing the paper to us and answering our questions on the housing register. I think there may be a point at which, when we come to our conclusions for the meeting as a whole, that we might want to consider inviting MHA to come to one of our meetings to take us through some of the things that they do with us and for us, which councillors may not currently be fully aware of in terms of how things stand. So I would like to suggest that on the back of taking this item, we could at the end of the meeting consider as a committee whether we would like to invite MHA to a future meeting, largely along the lines that, you know, we want to understand their side of it and how they are working with us. We're not talking necessarily about anything more than that. There are arrangements in place for councillors, as I understand it, to be working closely with MHA, indeed to be on the board. We've had Councillor Wintle make that point. But it's really whether we could engage as a committee, whether it would be appropriate, whether there are topics that this committee would like to engage with MHA on, or indeed any of our other social housing partners come to that. But for that item, thank you, Ian. Can we move then to the next one, which is your, on your bundle, members, paper 5. Yes, Councillor Wintle can come back in, of course. On the agenda, item 5, looking at the housing solutions. Are you going to take us through this again? Yeah, thank you.
Not really an awful lot to say about this, but obviously we've had a number of discussions about establishing a joint housing solutions service, as we're calling it, with Torvine, and that is moving at a pace now, and officially we're going to go live on Monday. Still lots of little bits to do to be working seamlessly, but we're in a position though to actually start working jointly. And one of the building blocks that we've been advised in terms of creating the new service was to establish a memorandum of understanding. So we've drafted one and it's attached. The advice that I've had from legal colleagues really was, in terms of the actual use of the document, is really in terms of dispute resolution. So if we did have any problems with Torvine, which I think is highly unlikely, but this would be our fallback position should the worst case scenario arise. So it's been modelled very similar to the memorandum of understanding that Housing Benefit has in place with Torvine. And so obviously this is in draft form, potentially ready for Cabinet.
Thank you, Ian, and I'm sure members will want to echo what you've just said, which is this piece of work, if I could call it that, has been to the committee at various stages in its evolution, which is absolutely right and as it should be. Even so, are there any questions that members would like to ask at this admittedly late stage? Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you've got the bundle there, Ian, you probably haven't. Service delivery. There's MAPA and MARAC. What are MAPA and MARAC? It's on Schedule 1.
MAPA is multi-agency public protection. I'm not sure the authority relates. So basically, it's your very high risk offenders,
right?
Schedule 1 offenders, and there's a partnership arrangement to supporting those. So we'll look to accommodate such households on release from prison, and we liaise with public protection and the police and probation in respect of accommodating those. And MARAC is a multi-agency risk assessment. Again, another multi-agency group, again, to support that process. And we work very closely with Rachel Allen in that respect.
Right. Okay. I just wonder if anyone's looking at this as a standalone document, they wouldn't know what Marek and MAPA was. So if it could be defined somewhere, it would be good, I think.
I think it's a very, very good point, if I might say so. It only needs to be given in full once, and then you put it afterwards, and it's clear what it is. That applies to any number of documents, not just this one. Are there any other questions or comments about this? Councillor Penny-Jones.
No, I think really, we've got to support this as we have seen it throughout its inception. But there is just one thing, and I don't know if you were going to bring it up, Chair, because you actually pointed it out, and it's interpretation 1.1. I would really, really like you to explain it to me, please, Ian. The masculine includes the feminine, and in the case of a corporation, the indefinite article and words importing the singular also include the plural, and vice versa where the context requires. Explain, please.
My defence is I overtyped. I overtyped a standard document that existed in the authority. So...
So, yes.
I'll speak to Rob about that. Speak to Rob and trying to make that a little bit more plain English. Fair point.
Thank you. I was going to send it to Private Eye to see its corner, but I take it, though, that the whole thing has been legally proofed, as it were, and that we're quite safe to sign this. Councillor Prosser.
It's just echoing previous comments, Chair. I'm making sure that any associated agreement we have reflects our commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant on the housing, and that needs to be make sure that other parties are on the same wavelength, basically. Thank you.
Are you suggesting that should be made explicit in the documentation?
Well, yes is the answer to that. I mean, we as an authority, we've signed the community covenant, and we have said that we will take special measures for those from the Armed Forces Services. So as long as it's defined in the document, I'd be happy with that. But yes, explicit reference. Thank you.
Can we do that?
Yeah, I'll look at how we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's an important point, and it follows the previous discussion as well. Are there any other members with questions or comments about this? Don't know where we are with the microphones. Could we? Ghastly prospect. Can I then sum up from the committee's point of view? We're actually pleased to see this come to fruition. In light of the discussion this morning, we would like an appropriate way to be found to include the reference to the Armed Services Covenant, and quite where that will be is very much not to be determined in this meeting now, but we'd like it to be there. And I don't know whether it also applies to Torvine or whether it's a specifically Monmouthshire thing. Perhaps Councillor Prosser, you could enlighten us on that.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. All local authorities in Wales have signed the community covenant, but it's just making sure that everybody's doing it in the same way is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
So, we welcome this, we support this, we'd like to see it go forward, and our recommendation is that there should be a special measure taken in the document to tie it into the Armed Forces Covenant, and I think that would satisfy the points that have been made. And I don't think there were any other substantive points that people would wish to take forward from the meeting. And in future, at some convenient point, we will be able to hear how this partnership is progressing. And that will give us, I think, almost uniquely in terms of the period of this current council, a complete, trackable follow-through from a concept to ideas about what it might look like to, as it were, a signed deed and then to monitoring of this new service. And I think members will be pleased by that. It's an achievement for the officers. It's actually an achievement for the committee that we've been able to see this through. And I'm sure that we will all want to wish this well. And it's about to start, and we hope it will not be derailed. Thank you very much, Ian. Move then to the next item, which is the revenue monitoring. There's a change of cast here. I think Tyrone is going to take the seat, and he's also going to be joined, and I'll ask him to introduce himself in a moment. Thank you very much, Ian. Mark, you've joined us since the initial introductions. I'd be very grateful if you could just, for the benefit of our viewers, just remind us who you are. And then I don't know which of you is going to lead off on this. Is it you or Tyrone?
For the purposes of the cameras, my name is Mark Howcroft, Assistant Head of Finance for Monmouthshire County Council. What we'll do is we'll double team this as we normally do. I'll give you the overall holistic position of the council and some headline messages, and then if you have any queries about any of the detail around adult services, I'm sure Ty will be able to help you with some of the detail of that. So the report starts on page 39, is item 6 of your bundle. And is effectively the same report that Cabinet sees and Select sees, and then we have specific appendices for the various Select areas. So we'll be moving on to Appendix 4, which covers the Adult Select, which starts on page 59. But just to give you a flavour of the overall position for the Council, at month 9 we predict the outturn, if everything stayed the same, to be £144,000 deficit. That's an improvement on month 6. And actually is a better position than I anticipated having to report, bearing in mind that included in those costs are over £500,000 worth of redundancy payments, which aren't a budgeted expense through the year. The principle that the council adopts with that is that the services are expected to find alternate savings through the year to afford, and for the council to make a caveated use of reserves for any net cost at the end of the year. So the actual expenditure includes over £500,000 worth of redundancy costs, which, as I said, wouldn't be a budgeted item. Of the mandated savings that service departments have to make, £500,000 worth of savings aren't manifest at month 9. So if you take that net effect of £1 million adverse situation, reporting £144,000 adverse at the end of the year shows that a lot of those savings and costs are actually being absorbed within departments as the year goes on. Interestingly, though, the pressures still exhibit in net cost of services lines, and it's things like treasury costs and additional council tax receipts that are offsetting that burden. And the biggest single challenge to the council going forward is predominantly in the social care and health arena, but largely around children's services rather than necessarily the adult area. And that's as a consequence that the activity area on that is very difficult to actively influence. Clearly we have child protection issues for a lot of that, and obviously some of the recent legislative changes means that actually some of the costs involved, case management, are a lot more significant than they were historically. Paragraph 3.19 indicates those areas for the various departments that are over and underspent, and we've used the traffic line system, that green is a favourable position and red is an adverse situation. You'll notice against adult services, whilst they show an adverse position of 41,000, the predominance of that is a result of savings that were anticipated to be made as part of the mandate process not having been made. So actually operationally They actually have a £70,000 underspend.
We have a question. Sorry, Councillor Wintle.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on the adult services, the historic Monovale partnership, cost apportionments and residential care costs. I don't suppose, I don't know if you're the right person to explain what all that is, because having been seen Monovale grow from a building plot to as it is at the moment, but I haven't heard anything about this before.
It has been a flavour of the quarterly monitoring. Is it okay if I take that after I've gone through the report as the first question? Yeah. So schools' position, we report that because obviously schools rely quite heavily on their reserve position to balance their improvement aspirations. And you'll appreciate that actually whilst the month 9 position shows a beneficial effect on month 6, if next year they utilise the same amount of reserves, collectively those reserves would expire. So we're at something of a bit of a crossroads with this, given the fact that the Welsh Government grants for improvement agenda are also being reduced. The next part of the report then goes on in more detail to explain the saving mandates and the progress being made. Significantly, since month 6, about £500,000 worth of savings have materialised, which is an improving position, but still leaves about £500,000 to be sorted before the end of the financial year. The report then goes on to explain the specific mandates related to the various departments and where there are pressures or challenges. And in relation to social care and health, there is a shortfall on the community meals take-up, but the predominance of the savings that aren't yet met is part of a corporate saving that was passed on to them in terms of additional payments around things like reduction in overtime, reduction in sickness, etc., that haven't managed to be made by social care. Other departments have managed successfully to do that, but obviously it impacts upon the question that Councillor Wintle made around things like staffing levels at residential homes, etc., that make that more difficult. I have also a bit of a confession. Appendix 1 seems to have been lifted in a fashion that means it's not complete. What should be included in Appendix 1 is all the mandates and all the savings progress. It just seems to have been lifted for enterprise. But the situation is no more sinister than already reported, that the 2 issues of savings still to be made are around the additional payments for adult services and the community meals, totalling £111,000 combined. If I could then refer you to page 59, which is Appendix 4, which is the Adult Select Appendix. This then breaks down adult services over the various service areas, adult services, community care, commissioning, etc. And you can see that actually there are some underspends in there in community care and resourcing and performance, which are mitigating the extent of overspends on adult services. Similar to the summary tables, then there's a table that explains the situation at month 9. And it indicates in brackets whether that's a worsening or an improving position on month 6, and actually explains the summary cause for it. New to the month 9 is part 3 of that appendices around performance management, which is designed to pull out some of the activity data to try to more closely attribute the activity against some of the costs. And you can notice that this is information that you will have seen in terms of the performance improvement agenda. But what it is demonstrating to me is that there's a satisfaction with the adult social care approach, which is quite significant. It suggests that actually our approach to support people in the community rather than through funded residential care is a reasonable and cost-effective one, and one which is appreciated by members of the public, and is also a fairly cost-effective arrangement. Service user numbers exhibits a similar, slightly reducing trend on the previous year. So you can actually make a useful comparison between this year and last year. Interestingly, the average sick days per FTA in adult services is more significant than the average for the council, and at 18 days is something that obviously was part of the corporate savings agenda, and is still a challenge that social care grapple with. And then in part 4 we have Simon's commentary, which in relation to adult services explains that the position is fairly static between month 6 and month 9, but actually indicates a £10,000 improvement on month 6. The overspend is only £40,000 in total, and obviously pales into significance to some of the challenges faced in children's services area. And at that point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mark. Are there any questions from members at this stage? David Hill?
Yeah, I was just interested in the in your table of adult social care, under item 3, where it says the number of older people who get package of care to support them in the community is running around about 1,200 or 1,100, whereas the sort of figures which I have heard, from Mono Vale and things like that suggest that they're, supporting something like about 3,000 people in the community on a daily basis. Have you got any sort of thought on that?
It's difficult to comment. This performance data is lifted directly from our SWIFT systems.
Yeah.
So the social worker should be inputting care plans, and it is off relevant active care plans at this moment in time. Mm-hmm. So those figures are the correct ones to use. So it's difficult to comment from who's made the comment to yourself around 3,000.
Well, these are figures that have been given at sort of the meetings we've been to, by the head of integrated services. There's something like about 3,000 people being supported in the community.
If I could just provide a point of clarification, it may simply be what the definition of a package of care is. We could actually find out what that means. But I mean, if I looked across there, the numbers tracking between years don't seem to exhibit any big drop that suggests to me that any information is missing, so I suspect it's more likely to be a definition issue, but we can find that out for you.
Okay, well, I'll ask you.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, on page, maybe you haven't got it, page 60 of the bundle. You just mentioned a predicted £40,000 overspend. Is that predicted for the end of the financial year, just so I can get that clear in my mind?
Yeah, it seems a fairly abstract concept. What we use is we use 3/4 of the year's worth of activity and predict that to the end of the year. So if nothing changed, we would anticipate a £40,000 out in adverse.
Okay, and by the same token then, community care with an underspend of £47,000, meaning, if you like, that we'd be profit. How does this compare with your recollection of other month 9 situations? Because it's a good directorate, and if the projections work out, that's amazing, to be perfectly honest.
I do think that adult doesn't exhibit the same volatility that children's services does, and probably gets a bit overshadowed in terms of the monitoring side of it. I'm confident that the management team in adult are a safe pair of hands. I mean, exhibited by the extent of the variance, and actually, if you ignored the additional payments mandate, they would actually be exhibiting an underspend situation.
satisfied by that? Yes.
I just want to pick up on one
Tyrone.
Sorry, I just want to pick up on one comment. What you were saying about community care is currently predicting an underspend of 47,000, and you said that would exhibit us being in a profit situation. Is not the £40,000 overspend for adult includes that 47?
All right.
So if everything stays the same, like Mark said, we use month 9 to predict where we're going to be at year end. But if everything stays the same, we will overall be 40,000 for adult, which includes community care.
Okay.
So I just want to...
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Councillor Penny-Jones.
I'd just like to take you to page 59, please, 1.2, which is the grid. And we've got various things there which I don't understand, so which isn't hard, by the way. We've got disability equipment worsening, no cause. We've got management team worsening. What does that mean? No cause. We've got commissioning worsening, no cause. Could you just explain those to me, please, or to us?
Yeah. What I asked the accountants to do is that to actually provide, by exception, any variance over £20,000. So where the variance is only £1,000, I haven't asked them to go into that level of detail.
That's fine, but this document can be seen by others as well as us, you know, and may not be at this meeting. So could that be made clear somewhere, please?
You can do, but if you can appreciate that against the whole budget for disabled equipment and management team, they are only £1,000 adverse against the whole year.
Yes, yeah. Yes, but what I'm saying is there's no explanation there, or obvious explanation, why there are empty boxes.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yes, I'd echo that. It's just so that there's something there to, otherwise you think, yeah. Are there any other questions from members? Yes.
If I take that for you, I believe this was raised at month 6, so I think we squared it off at the last adult select. Basically, with Monovale is a social care community hospital, is a joint partnership between the Health Board and Monmouthshire County Council. At the start, when we entered into the agreement, the costs were agreed. It's just the budget's not in line with the actual costs. So we are getting value for money. I think when I explained it at month 6, we only take 28% of the share of the overall costs. We've got a Section 33 agreement with Health that details all that legally, and we monitor that in finance to make sure we only take our fair share as per the Section 33. We have monthly budget monitoring meetings with my counterparts in Health, so we do track that expenditure. It's just the fact that our budget is not aligned with the actual expenditure.
Thank you very much. That's as long as we're in credit, that's all that matters.
Yeah. But we're not incurring any more cost than we should, and if it is overspending, we have got early indications where we do meet with our health counterparts. I think I mentioned at month 6, they actually host the finances for it, but we do interrogate those finances on a monthly basis. Thanks.
Are you satisfied by that? Yes. Thank you. Did you want to come in on this, Mark?
Not specifically on this. I'm conscious that you would also like to understand about adult education, which is another appendice. So
you are psychic as well as an accountant.
I figured I'd get in there preemptively first.
I think this is going to be next year's big BAFTA and Oscar winner, the psychic accountant. I don't know who will play you, but thank you. Yes, please.
So if I could refer you to page 55, which is Appendix 3. It's the Adult Education Service at the moment is exhibiting a £54,000 overspend. It's had a number of challenges this year. It had to find £90,000 worth of savings as part of the savings mandates. It had about a third of its income reduced by Coleg Gwent in terms of its commissioning arrangements. And the latest situation is that it deals with a project called the Novus project. I don't know whether members are familiar with that. It's basically a digital inclusion project for adults. We've since found out that WEFO, which is one of the funding agencies for it, has is intent to withdraw some of the grants funding in a year, which has a potential £43,000 worth of problem. So what I can report since month 9 is that the service has rather successfully mitigated a lot of the Colleague Gwent franchise income matter, and but for the Novus project grant, would actually be reporting a break-even situation. So we now have a £43,000 problem that we're looking to address. So it's of the same magnitude in terms of an overspend situation, but for a slightly different reason.
Thank you, and thank you for anticipating that. That's very helpful. Can I, since you've brought this to our attention, can I then, as you would expect, make my perennial concern clear? I am concerned that adult education still falls between at least 2 stools. And I think what I would like to propose when we come to make our recommendations is that this committee asks to have an opportunity to scrutinise adult education. We have had them here before, but I think we should be inviting the head of the service and indeed the director of the department to come and talk to us about the issues that are being raised by it. I don't know whether members would agree with that. I don't want to be just somebody pursuing a hobby horse, but it troubles me that a service is, if you like, being able to be kept out of scrutiny, not deliberately, just by the way things are arranged, and that cannot be right.
Chair, sorry, could I just say, yes, I feel that it's falling between 2 stools and it's just going to disappear, and things may go wrong. So it's obviously at a point where it needs support as well. So I agree with wholeheartedly with what you say.
So we'd like to make that one of our recommendations, requests, whatever, following the meeting. But going back to the material that Tyrone and Mark have taken us through, are there any further questions? So I think we're fairly satisfied on the figures. We thank you for your analysis. And the point to be taken forward was the idea that on page 59, if we could just look at possibly putting a cause in the box, even though it may well not be terribly complicated, it just better to have a cause than to have the box left blank, I think is the conclusion. And we know that you'll look onto that. And we recommend training in the psychic arts for all senior staff, following the very positive performance by Mark on that score this morning. Have we done with this item? Tyrone, Mark, once again, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Item 7 brings us to our forward work programme, and I'm going to invite Hazel to give us an overview. And we should bear in mind, I think, that we've already said 1 or 2 things this morning that might have an impact on this or the work programme for the next incarnation of this committee. Hazel.
Yeah, your next regular diarised meeting is on the 14th of April. Just want to check with you whether the items that are in there are the items that you would like to table. You'll have budget monitoring. I think Caroline, I've had a discussion with Ian about that. The paper for that wasn't ready to come today, so we couldn't deal with all of Ian's issues today. Gwysi's is a report where you had concerns and you wanted You wanted them to come back with greater information, I believe. From recollection, I think you were unhappy with the level of information that you had last time. And you said you wanted to scrutinise the configuration of the services, but when you had a sort of broad outline and presentation, your concerns were around the cost of the service and the performance, and I guess you've touched on that today in the finance report. So are you happy to request that they come back for the 14th of April?
Can we indicate we are happy? Yes? Yes?
And then, because I'm also psychic, you'll see in the work programme that you've got a special meeting programmed in there for April to be confirmed, where I've suggested inviting Monmouthshire Housing Association in to discuss with Strong Communities Committee perhaps the work programme has actually been updated, Chair, since... I believe...
It may well be.
Yeah. This has been updated in the last couple of days since the agenda's gone out, but just above where you've got May, I've put in a box that just says special meeting potentially in April, where we could call in Monmouthshire Housing Association. And Ian's suggestion was actually that although we don't have formal powers yet at the moment to scrutinise them and hold them to account, that would come under the legislation that's going through the Assembly at the moment on the Health and Wellbeing Bill. If that's passed through, then we get formal power to scrutinise external partners. But that doesn't stop us having a close working relationship with them, which we've had for some time, and they've never actually been backwards in coming forwards to committee. They are quite willing to come and talk to you, and Ian's suggestion was that actually your discussions with them are on the housing register, also on their community development programmes, and also what they're doing on welfare reform. And I think that would tie into the discussions that you've had over the course of this year and last year about the bedroom tax. You discussed with Torvine as well the financial sort of implications there, and I think this would tie in to have that sort of discussion with MHA. So I think it would be an issue that you would probably want to invite Strong Communities to discuss with you, because it does kind of cut over the two committees, because they do have some sort of responsibilities for housing, whereas yours is more sort of housing from a welfare point of view. So would you be agreeable to perhaps having a special meeting in April? And I'm guessing it would follow after the 14th of April meeting, so maybe towards the end. Or is election going to be
There may be some issues
an issue?
about the timing. Do we go into Purda, don't we?
We've got the election. Sorry, Chair, can I speak? I personally think it's not for the welfare side of it, perhaps, although I think it can wait. But I certainly think from the housing point of view, it's far too soon. I would prefer it a bit later. But there is so much going on in those couple of months that, quite honestly, we're going to be so busy, including Easter holidays.
Yeah.
And I really feel it's too soon. I would rather review it and scrutinise it when it's been up and running for at least two months or 3 months, but certainly not next month. Oh, sorry.
More comments, members, on is it on this particular item? Sorry.
Just saying about Easter, but also it says on there that we could invite Strong today. Were they invited or not?
They weren't invited to come today. I think we would invite them for the meeting that we're discussing holding, but I take Ken's point that, timing and the election and everything. I don't think this one is a time-sensitive issue, so really, if you would like to leave it until after the election, and in the new sort of administration.
Are you going to pick this one up as well?
Yeah, just
Councillor
to
Harris, before we
reiterate, some of us are going to
consolidate?
be very busy, and I'd hate to think that the attendance would be bad, and that's not good either. But one other thing on my list here, and maybe I've missed it somewhere. Julie Boothroyd was supposed to come today on dolls. Have I missed it, or is that going to come somewhere else?
We had the discussion about dolls when we discussed the risk assessment, so that was only last not as high risk and the position isn't the same as what it was when she came to talk to you previously. So I think there's nothing actually to report on dogs at the moment. Other issues that I believe you'll want to discuss are one that's been raised by a member of the public, which is around continuing health care. And I think we did discuss that if we had that sort of discussion, we would probably do it in a special meeting. We didn't put a timescale on it, but it could possibly be part of the special meeting where you invite MHA for half of the meeting and then you deal with that other topic for the other half of the meeting. But I wouldn't recommend more than that in one meeting. I think you could do them both justice in 2.5 hours, but I think that would be enough for a special.
Can I ask, sorry, what does continuing healthcare mean? Does it mean health right through to the elderly, care of the elderly?
This was former Councillor Harris's issue. It's a specific issue for some individuals with particular needs. It's not a sort of overview of the collective health career, as it were. It's some specific issues. And it was actually Mr. Harris, a former county councillor, who raised these issues. And it would, I think, be helpful for us to look at those issues. But I think the timing is critical, that we don't put some major pieces of work in at this stage. So my sense is that people are welcoming the proposed additions to the programme, with one more that we've already mentioned, that's adult education, but that you're actually asking for the timing to be such that if need be, it'll have to come into the life of the new committee now, won't it? Will it? When do we change over?
Early May. Early May.
But certainly after the election. Yeah. There is a suggestion from Hazel about how we could accommodate it.
I think that particular item, because we haven't got an awful lot of detail at this stage, in order to do Mr. Harris's request justice, we would need to flesh out what the issues are, and we would need to speak to individuals before that meeting to get the right people present. So I actually think that we're nearly at March now. I think it will take between March and potentially May or June, when we would hold that meeting, for myself and the chair to go through the process that we'll need to put in place to get that meeting to be successful. I mean, for instance, the last meeting you had with the health board, myself and the chair, we set up meetings with the health board to talk to them in advance about sort of different lines of inquiry, different information that we'd need. And I'm suggesting we're going to need to do that with Mr. Harris, and then go and speak to other individuals such as the health board again, to get them to be prepared and come on the day. I think it's not going to be okay to just put that in a special meeting and just hope we can do justice on the day, because I think the concerns are very specific. So I think allowing myself and the chair a bit of time to meet with Councillor Harris and to meet with the health board and sort of flesh that out would be a good idea.
So are you content with that? So at this stage we're saying coming into the programme, yes, but the actual date can't be fully decided at this stage, but we'll try and do it within the life of this particular incarnation of the committee if we can, but we might not be able to.
Can I make another suggestion, Chair, for the 14th of April? Because if you have your 14th of April meeting and then you've got your May meeting, which May is pretty much always quite a busy meeting, because we tend to always deal with POVA and the annual council reporting framework report, which is basically the annual report for social services. Those items always fall to the May meeting, so I'm thinking that possibly if you want to deal with adult education, you might want to put it into the 14th of April. I mean, that would mean that you'd have potentially Caroline, Gweisi's adult education and capital budget monitoring, but I'm not actually sure if the KLM report would be ready for that meeting anyway. You've had 3 items today and you were finished quite quickly because you were quite succinct with your views. So I think it's feasible, otherwise you're going to be leaving it a few months.
Thank you very much indeed. So we've got now some clear ways forward on our work programme, and thank you for that. So I think what we now need to do is do some quick summarising of where we are. We've talked about we always talk about important issues. Of the items that we've discussed this morning, just going back very quickly through the items on the agenda, we've talked about the future delivery of the housing register. We have accepted the recommendations, and we seemed to think that that paper plus the accompanying health check was actually a very well done and useful piece of work. We are recommending that it goes forward as proposed, with the additional point in particular that we'd like to see the armed forces dimension included. I think that was the conclusion on that particular item. We've talked about the Housing Solutions memo. Again, we accept that. We would like to see it go ahead with the recommendation that it also includes the armed forces dimension. As far as the revenue side was concerned, the financial side of the reports, we, as always, I think, received helpful and factual explanations from our officers. As it happens today, we didn't need a sort of management perspective. I've no doubt we could have had it if we'd asked for it, but it wasn't necessarily required today. However, for the future, we've asked for the causes box in the table, for example, on page 59, to, if possible, be completed so that we're all clear what that's actually about, and it matches all the others. We've also said, and we've just confirmed it in our discussion of our forward work programme, that we would like adult community education to come before us, and we're talking about the April date for that. And we've also said, again, times to be confirmed, that we would like Monmouthshire Housing to come to the committee, and it's been suggested that there are a range of topics that we could very usefully engage with them on. And the model is, I think, we've established the model, probably established it as well, if not better, than anywhere else at the moment within the council's overall work. We established a good way of working with the health board, as it were, in the interregnum between everybody knowing that scrutiny of external bodies is on the way, but before it actually comes into force. We've managed to get round that, I think, very constructively with the health board, and I think we should aim to do the same with MHA. And we've also, I forgot to mention this earlier, sorry, in the bit about the housing solutions, we're not talking about a joint scrutiny committee with Torvine. I'm sorry, that's a bit out of sequence. What we're suggesting is that scrutiny of this area of work continues to be done by us through here in the first instance. There may well be a much bigger picture that we need to develop across the council as we learn how to scrutinise a number of other partnerships and joint programmes, but this isn't one of them. This is one to maintain within this committee. Have I, admittedly not in a completely strict sequence, have I covered all the things that we've agreed this morning? Councillor Wintle.
Just one thing, would it be possible for acronyms to be
Yes, in terms of the presentation of papers, and we're not being critical of the papers that we've received this morning. There have been times when we have been. I don't think we can be today. But we would remind people that these papers are public documents and that where acronyms are used, they should always be, in their first appearance, done in full with the name of the acronym given, and then you know that when you refer to it in future in the paper, you can at least go back and find it. Because we had 2 examples this morning at least of where we weren't particularly clear. Mapper was one. I kept thinking of Mapper Mundi, which isn't anything to do with it, is it? Colleagues, we're coming up to 11:30. I have had requests that we continue in session until 12, but I'm going to ignore those requests. Thank you for your time. Thank you, as always, for your contributions. And can I, particularly on this occasion, thank Councillor John Prosser for joining us. I think, John, you made some very telling suggestions, which I hope we're going to be able to take on board. And thank you for joining us. The meeting is closed. Thank you.
Goal.